Welcome and thank you very much for the invitation. I've been asked to do this in English. I hope it's because there are English-speaking people present. It's not because you don't understand Danish. But nevertheless, I shall try to look into this question of urban cultures and how we integrate them in urban planning. And the question of urban culture has been sort of present for a long time. And the sort of term cultural planning has also been used at least for 25, 30 years, but it has gradually changed its meaning, and so has the practice trying to use that approach to planning. And if we ask some of the old guys, you can see sort of statements like it's about a fair distribution of economic and social and cultural resources. But also, if you go to Landry, that it's also about a sort of a strategic approach, trying to discover and unfold the potential of culture in the way we are dealing with cities. And if you look at the practice forms, I would argue that it started some 30 years ago by simply planning for cultural institutions, basically, and then it gradually sort of developed into integrating that effort and the capacity and the sort of potential of the cultural institution into a broader perspective of how does it work in the city, what sort of cultural environment can it create. And I think that's what we are going for, something like what's down here, planning based on visions of a rich and diverse everyday life based on cultural activities, and very much looking for the cultural impact of what we are doing. But if we start at number one, I think everybody sort of, or many average people say that this is cultural planning, the Bilbao case. And I think what's the problem here is that it's heavily misinterpreted, the Bilbao project, because it was actually a multi-layered project with, okay, there was this Geary building, but they did a lot of other things at the same time. They built a huge music hall. They did a lot of local sort of initiatives to sort of increase the quality of daily life. So the impact of the big cultural institutions actually worked on the background of a lot of other initiatives happening at the same time. And I think that was what created a quite successful strategy in Bilbao, not the building itself alone. And if you look sort of through history, I would argue that also Barcelona actually developed a very important sort of approach to something which could be called at least a growing interest in the cultural aspect of planning, because they had this sort of division between what Jean Busquet, who was a city architect at that time, labeled rehabilitation and restructuring, saying that we have to sort of increase the quality of daily life in the city all over with a lot of small initiatives, and then we have to indicate areas which can take bigger restructuring projects, which can sort of take new functions, new type of urban ensembles, which can create new, more international oriented culture, but we have to do both things at the same time. And everybody knows that they increase the school capacity, the quality of life for ordinary people all over the city. They created these meeting places, which created places where people could meet and develop a local culture, but also having a better daily life that they had in the Franco regime. So that first phase of a sort of cultural interest in the city was sort of carried on in the strategic plan they made in the year 2000, where they indicated, it was very much about the restructuring process, they indicated areas which could be redeveloped, and by redeveloping those areas, it would have a great impact of the whole city. And one of the major initiatives in that strategy was to increase the quality of, which is not translated into English, stranden, the beach. And I think that has been one of the really, really impressive and very, very important changes in Barcelona. Jean Busquet, the city architect I referred to, has told me that when he was young, he's out of a very wealthy family. Everybody who had the possibility sort of moved out of the city every weekend to holiday cottages in the mountains or further down the coast. Only people who couldn't afford it stayed in the city. And he says, today he's got 3 kids, and they are all of them quite wealthy and very highly educated. And they are staying with their families in the city all the weekend because of the beach, because the city has developed so much, so you can live a full daily life, which is quite attractive and more attractive than going down the coast. And I think that's extremely important, and it's very much about the city having developed this completely new possibility, which didn't exist before 1990, of sort of celebrating the closeness to the sea. And they took a new step, I believe, in the same direction when they introduced this project of the 22 at district, which is a former industrial district. But they set up a very interesting planning framework, because they said, we want to develop this as a knowledge district, but at the same time, we want to keep it as a very mixed district with all sorts of people, all social groups, but we also want to make it very international. And they created a very special and powerful planning unit with which could allow for negotiating about social affairs, about building, about traffic, about everything. And that planning unit developed that area. And I think they have been able to sort of fulfill the aim, because there's a lot of small initiatives gradually upgrading the buildings. With few buildings, things are happening in the building because they have sort of increased the quality of the area. There's also a lot of new international head offices, a lot of highly educated people next to that. And there's a very sort of close mixture of international things. If we are standing underneath an international hotel here, and next to it there's a restored building which is a center for unemployed people, and all of that different things are sort of knitted together, creating a very sort of mixed and interesting environment, which are actually maintaining a sort of traditional culture. It's the main street, which are still giving a very, very clear sort of vision of this complexity. It has a sort of very sort of average daily life, but it also includes this international orientation into a new type of urban culture, which I think is very, very promising. And we can go to another project, which I think is also interesting in the broad sort of approach, which include a sort of a cultural thinking. It's lower Loire River. The Loire River is coming here and running into the ocean here. But all the municipalities along this lower part of the river has agreed in that they are all depending on the quality and the landscape of the River Loire. So they made a sort of agreement on adding what they can add to the quality of the whole landscape, because they argue that we take our identity of being in the Loire Valley. It means a lot for the quality of the landscape, whether we can sort of manage the environment in a sort of sustainable way. It also means a lot for tourist economy and stuff like that. So we need to look at that landscape as a cultural basis, and everybody should sort of add to that. And each of those projects, I'll look at number 1, is actually an interesting sort of cultural project, each of them. The Nantes project that was indicated as number 1 is Ile de Nantes, the island in the middle of the river. The Nantes city is over here. It used to be a shipyard. You can see the traces up there, the knot traces up there. And Alexander Shemetov, who was the planner, won the competition, argued that a landscape like this one, structured like that, is only inviting very, very big developers and investors, because if you should deal with such an area, you have to have a great capacity. And if you allow that to happen, you will have a very sort of one-dimensional environment. So the first step he took was to introduce a much more fine-grained system, saying that that system invites a lot of different actors to come into the area, and that will create a completely different culture in the area. So that was the first very, very basic step. And then the next step was to indicate places where the first sort of movement should happen, trying to start this process of restructuring. And it's that one and that one, which are the starters, the first things to try and change the environment. So it started, this is sort of a 15 years old image. It started as a completely sort of traditional industrial area. And then the city should host a new court building. The court building is designed by Jean Nouvel, and it was put on the island, but in a quite clever way, because if you, at that time, placed yourself in the lobby area of the court building, you actually looked back to the historical city. So you had the feeling that the historical city sort of was moving out and trying to change the island. And this is an image from the first. It was in the middle of that industrial sort of complexity. But what happened then with the fine-grained system was, of course, that investors started to ask, could I have that plot there? And they didn't have any general sort of guidelines. They just negotiated and saying, okay, that looks okay, and we want a mixture of so and so and so. So they negotiated from plot to plot what could happen around these first step buildings. And when that had sort of started to work, they took the next one, a similar sort of important building, and that was the School of Architecture designed by Vassal and Lacaton. And it's a very important building in the sense that it introduced 600 students into the area, but it's also a building which is completely sort of able to integrate and open up. All of this can be open, the workshops are in here. So in the summertime it's completely open. You can look at it as you went around in Rome and looked at a small business. You can also all day round, all year round, go to the top, even in your car, and use it as a point where you can look at the city. So it's a building which really works in the city and allows for a lot of activities to happen. And that was the next step. And of course, putting its own sort of culture outside the students' cafe, creating an urban outdoor life, which then started a new sort of culture around that building. And they took all the sort of different, very important buildings and made them into something which could work in creating a new culture in the air. These big sheds from the shipbuilding era is sort of stripped and used for exhibitions. This elephant lives in there. And it's open for a lot of different activities. You'll find if you go there, sometimes there's very few things happening. Sometimes it's used all over. Sometimes it's small exhibitions. But it's sort of taking part in urban life all day round. And around it, there's huge areas which are very rough, but also rough on a very conscious basis, because they want to invite a lot of different activities, and they also expose sort of the cleaning up of materials in the same area. So it's a very sort of unconventional central area, but sort of putting the message that here's something happening which is quite unusual, and we invite you to do something in the space. We invite you to understand the processes of change going on, and we have to clean stuff and all that. And you go on taking that one, something happening, something happening, each of them in a way creating their own culture. And then the next step is going over here and introducing a new one, taking a former industrial building, stripping it, making it into something hybrid between a greenhouse and an open space. And of course, that's also inviting people to come and sort of what can happen here? How can we use that? And gradually it creates an atmosphere and a spirit to do something in the quarter around it. And in general, they have been very, very careful in keeping old, cheap buildings so they can allow for a lot of sort of alternative cultural activities to happen. In that strip, you can get drunk very, very cheap, but you can also get a very, very sophisticated meal. So they invite people from all groups to be there and to mingle and to sort of recreate the idea of the city as where a lot of different people meet. And in general, they have been able to create a sort of counterpart or expand the feeling of what Nantes is about, because the classical Nantes is a very beautiful city, a classical city, and on the other side of the river, they have added this this new environment, which invite for a lot of experiments, building up a new and expanded feeling of an urban culture. That was before coming to Copenhagen. If we then go to Copenhagen, I would start in 1986, because at that time the understanding of the importance of the harbour started to be realized. And there was a competition in 1986, a very open competition, just asking the questions, how can we reuse the harbour? And this is the first prize project from that competition. And what they argued was that the main problem is that the harbour used to be completely industrialized. It's not part of daily life. So what will we do? We have to introduce big cultural institutions, because that can attract people, and then it would spread out from that position. So what Copenhagen has been doing is, the first one was an extension of the National Library, and it has created a very sort of clear node for urban life, which is working all year round. And then came the opera, and then came the extension of the National Theatre, and especially that one is working very well, because it's quite successful in being a theatre, but having a very inviting sort of lobby area which work all day round, all year round. You can pass through it, you can pass outside it, depending on the weather, and it's actually a very, very active building. And now it has been expanded with a new public area on the other side. So that was the first step in opening up the harbour. Back in '86, there was also this project, and everybody believed at that time it was completely ridiculous, because it was a time of postmodernism. Buildings should be heavy and very sort of classical, and presenting something like that was completely ridiculous in '86. But what happened just after 2000 was that this small swimming unit was placed next to a park which already existed. And those two things together has actually developed a pole of a new type of urban culture in a way. Because what was a culture related to the cultural institutions, that was people dressed in black, going to theatre, going to the library, a sort of quite formal urban life. And what happened here was suddenly in the very middle of the city, you could see people in tiny small bathing suits running around next to the black people. And that, of course, created a completely new feeling of what's the city about, what sort of culture can it take, what can happen in a city. And it created a new image, a new understanding of urban culture. And the same happened out here with an extension of the beach on the Amager coastline, because I think everybody believed that a beach in Copenhagen is something working 2 months in the summertime, then it's too cold and nothing will happen. But what's the reality here is that it works all year round. There's a lot of things happening all year round, but also all sort of 24 hours in a way. There's a lot of music events. There's a lot of sort of spontaneous things going on. There's a lot of nightlife even in the summertime, and it has sort of been open for new activities, for new urban cultures. For instance, a lot of immigrant groups have sort of using that area created a new sort of beach culture which they didn't have before. And it's a mixture of all social groups, all age groups, all sort of different groups in society, using that and creating a very, very interesting area, because it's very open for reinterpretation of what can happen here. It's not something saying it's only for that type of purpose, that type of culture. There was a quite important competition launched a couple of years ago. It started as an extension plan for the university campus, which is the natural science campus up here, and the medicine is here. And they had to expand. But then the municipality started to saying, okay, it might be about more than just expanding the university. It might be about asking, what is the impact and what can be the integration between the university and the surrounding district? So the program asked the question, how can the neighboring district benefit from a university? How can university benefit from things happening here? How can startup firms actually start here? How can students use that? How can the integration be between these two areas? This is the first project coming from the young firm Kobe, coming up with a lot of suggestions for how could we develop that one. Of course, there's a lot of money here. This has to happen because they need the space, but at the same time, you should do things over here, which gradually will build up a lot of connections, but also a sort of new culture in that area, relating to the university and relating to the sort of big theme of the knowledge city. And then we could sort of follow the Kobe, this young firm, to the North Harbour, which they also won as an international competition. The North Harbour today looks like that. It's industrial harbour. The container facilities are here. They're now moved to Malmö, and it's open for redevelopment. The shape is today like that, and the plan will make it like that. And that's very important, because what they do up here is that they create a city for 75,000 new people and 40,000 new jobs. But they at the same time create a new district with a lot of facilities very similar to what is related or introduced here, which is open for the whole city. And it's not just adding to the number of people in the city, it's also adding to the quality of the whole city and giving a lot of new options, which means that, like in Barcelona, it will be very attractive to go up there during the weekend instead of taking your cars and running 50 kilometers to the north coast. The plan is very much about benefiting the most from the situation, having a lot of canals, making everybody living next to the water, having a branch of the ring metro, which makes it very, very comfortable to live there, having a very, very comfortable system of high-speed bicycle lanes, and making it very complicated for car drivers to go there. So they want to create a city which from day one is sort of oriented towards public transport and bicycle traffic. And then this layer of huge recreational areas which the whole city will benefit from. So it's a very sort of profound question of what can we benefit from that position, but also by sort of exploiting the qualities here, being a city on the water, how can we add to the quality of the whole city? How can we give space for expanding urban cultures by having a lot of different spaces, different ways of meeting the water, spaces which can be used all year round, soft and hard spaces, and by doing so, attracting new groups, also new mixtures to the area. This is the first phase, and it benefits from, of course, from the position. It's a fantastic view to Sweden, to Malmö, but also it benefits from, there's a lot of existing buildings, so you can get this attractive mixture of old and not so orderly. It has tremendous capacity to really add to the quality of Copenhagen, as mentioned up here. But there's also a problem, and that's the economic pressure, because this development should pay for the ring metro, and that puts a lot of pressure on the prices here. And that means that putting affordable housing, putting areas for low rent for alternative cultures is difficult. They're trying to do it, but it's difficult because of the financial construction. All of that was about projects which I believe is dealing with a sort of expanded vision of culture related to the dense city, to the center of the city. What's also important from my point of view is to look at the huge areas built after the Second World War, which is a completely different story, with very, very few sort of nodes of centrality, and fewer, because what used to be there of shops and stuff like that is moving away because of centralization. And in a way, the same is happening to the smaller cities, that the shops are disappearing because of changes in the sort of service industry. So I think another very important question to ask is to what extent can cultural institutions, or to what extent do they have the capacity to replace or supplement shops as meeting places, as traditional meeting places, in sort of urban environments, and sort of points of centrality and feeling of identity. And I think what we have been able to sort of, or what has happened during the last 10 years, is that there's been a great awareness of the capacity of the library, because the library is not going to die because of the book maybe is not used so much, because the interest in the library is coming from such machines, from just being there. A lot of other activities can happen, and this new build one, it's actually also by Kove, is a combination of a library, meeting facilities, a cafe, an urban garden, and stuff like that. And it's actually allowing for new cultures to develop. A lot of Muslim girls are actually coming there because it's a free space for them. They are allowed to go to the library and do things they are not allowed to do else. And that means that they are meeting youngsters from other groups. They're meeting people using the library in a traditional way, people using search machines. And it's actually a pole for developing new urban cultures, which are very, very successful. And it's surrounded by an urban garden, which is very, very popular during the summertime. But one aspect of the popularity and the potential of that one is actually also that the gangs are trying to sort of conquer it, because it's so successful. And they are trying to say it's ours. And there's been a struggle going on to what extent it's the district point, or it's actually some of the gangs which should control that. But in a way, it shows just the potential of such an installation. And I think what's also has been realized is the potential of the school, not just being a school, but being a meeting point with very, very great importance for the local community, as a meeting point, as a point of identity. And this school in Ørestad, and Ørestad is really lacking meeting points. They've got the big shopping center, and everybody is believed to go inside and use a lot of money, but they've got not so many sort of meeting places outside. The school has got a huge library in the street level, so inviting people inside, making a sort of combination of the pupils using the library and people coming in, but also a space which is addressing the street in a traditional way, like a shop would do it, and sort of directly taking over the position of the traditional shop. And then the building itself is organized like the School of Architecture in Nantes. You can go up and actually use it as a point of viewing from where you can view the city. In the daytime, these terraces is for the school kids, but it's open. At the moment it's not. There's been some conflicts, but it used to be open. You could actually go there in the weekend and use it as part of the city landscape. And by so, of course, the school became a much more important part of the whole society. And there's another new school which very much take that position of sort of framing urban life. It's formed like it really makes a meeting point and have a lot of meeting facilities inside, and take that position in a new build, primarily housing area, to be the center where people meet, where they sort of find their identity. The kids, the playgrounds is open all day round. The sports facilities are open for the quarter. So it's taking that position of being the parts around which the new urban cultures will actually be organized. Barcelona has for 10 years or 15 years now, it has been running a policy saying that there should be a sort of a center for local people in each district in Barcelona, and they have combined those sort of points out of different activities. Here it's a building, a combination of a library and a home for elderly people. But when you walk along the city, you'll be in a sort of traditional Barcelona city, and then you enter here into a building. And when you pass, you see this almost paradise inside. You see this fantastic, inviting sort of small green space. You go in there, you've got the library here, which of course works in the local context. And then you come into the center and you'll find a playground there. It's taken in the siesta, so there's not so many people. But if you come at 5 o'clock, it's completely full of young families with kids, but also elderly people living up here, sitting around and looking at that, and people using the library, also using the courtyard. So it's combining different groups, different age groups, but also creating a sort of a node for local life in that district and building up a sort of local identity, a local culture next to the urban culture in Barcelona. I had to use architectural students to sort of make activity. But you have this interaction between the more anonymous street life and that sort of pocket of very intense local life. From Utrecht, I took an example which I also think is very important by sort of clashing what normally is two very, very different cultures, a business park and an allotment garden. Normally a business park is sort of surrounded by golf course-like greenery, and that's it. You've got the buildings and you've got this green lane. What they did here, it's Westacht, the firm, they said we can use that space for another thing, we can use it for allotment gardens. And actually the people working in the business parks, and it's much more interesting to look at what's happening down here. People are doing strange things down there. But it has also been able to become a destination on a bicycle route through Utrecht. I don't think very many people would bike through a business park, but because of what is happening here, it's actually been integrated into the city. There's a very active and very much used bicycle route through this area because of the allotment gardens, because of putting those different activities on top of each other. Yeah. Sorry, I'll just drop this one then, and just if I'll just finish on that one, because it's a quotation of Sharon Sukin. I don't know if you know the American sociologist, but she have this quite ironic comment on making the city attractive in order to keep the undesirables out. And I think we have to sort of take that in mind, that many of those projects has a great cultural capacity, but it's very often sort of combined with us as middle class people, and in a way sometimes or quite often pushing other groups out. And this is a small square next to where I live in Vesterbro in Copenhagen, and it used to be 30 years ago there was nothing happening, it was just a square. Then the cafes, this one was the first one to start, and when it started, the left-wing mayor said we have to plant a tree because we have to make a place where the non-privileged people can gather. And that worked for many years, that the cafes was situated here, and all the alcoholics and all the disadvantaged people was gathering down there. And it actually worked quite well, even when they became drunk in the afternoon. It was quite noisy. It worked. And then the gentrification went on, and an ice bar came, say, okay, there's a market for very expensive ice cream here. And they settled down there. And they attracted a lot of young families with kids, and they said, okay, we cannot allow our kids to see all these alcoholics. And then the alcoholics was kid out. And now it's only middle class people. It's absolutely no disadvantaged people any longer. They're sitting outside. All of this is for us now. And I think that's a sort of a sad story about our sort of missing ability to take care of that. It can actually be quite successful, but often by not being careful enough, we sort of are part of creating this, making the city attractive in order to keep the non advantaged people out. And I think that's what's very important to keep in mind when we are dealing with culture in the city. So thank you and excuse me.
Väldigt intressant att höra Jens, och kul att så många är här. Jag ska börja där. Jag ska prata om kultur och social hållbarhet. Jag arbetar som specialist inom social hållbarhet och kultur på White. Och jag har en bakgrund som kultursociolog och kulturproducent och kurator. Några av de saker jag gjort tidigare finns här. När jag har jobbat med mycket platsspecifika kulturarrangemang, men också med strategisk utveckling med kultur och fritidsaktiviteter bland annat. Och den bläddrar på sig själv här, det kanske är bra för att hålla tiden. Hållbarhet, ja. Vi har ju ett mål. Vi vill sträva mot att det blir ett socialt hållbart samhälle, att vi mår bra helt enkelt. Det är det viktigaste. Och för att komma dit så behöver vi anpassa oss utifrån vissa förutsättningar. Vi har ett klimat och en ekologi att förhålla oss till som sätter ramarna. Och då får vi anpassa våra mål efter det. Och emellan där så har vi vår ekonomi. Den ger oss verktyg, men den sätter också ramar och tak och så vidare. Men framförallt är den ett verktyg för att kunna hantera olika saker för att nå de här målen. Och de här 3 perspektiven på hållbarhet brukar man ju tala ofta om. Alltså det sociala, ekonomiska och ekologiska. Och hur de kan samverka i bästa fall. Och då kommer kulturen in här och en del säger att det är en 4:e dimension. Och då skulle jag säga att den går igenom alltihopa. Och då menar jag kultur i en förståelse som är närmast antropologisk, alltså våra traditioner och vårt sätt att leva helt enkelt. Och det påverkar ju alla de här dimensionerna. Och kulturens roll för social hållbarhet är inte bara jag som talar om, utan det pratar ju många om. Här är det UNESCO som kom med en rapport nyligen. Där då Francesco Bandarin säger att culture is a fundamental tool for sustainable development. Alltså kulturen är ett grundläggande verktyg för hållbarhet och hållbar utveckling. Den här kom bara för en månad sedan. Mycket intressant, 300 sidor lite drygt om man vill fördjupa sig i det. Och sen har vi Habitat 3, New Urban Agenda, där man också pekar ut kultur som ett väldigt, väldigt viktigt verktyg för hållbarhet. Det här var ju nyligen i Quito och det kommer säkert komma fler rapporter och resultat därifrån, men jag plockade fram det här. Och i Sverige kan man också se att kulturen börjar lyftas fram som ett verktyg för sociala hållbarheten, inte minst i socioekonomiskt utsatta områden, ofta miljonprogramsområden, där regeringen gett uppdrag till Statens konstråd och Kulturråd bland annat att se hur de kan stötta kulturella aktiviteter i de områdena. Och det här är ju komplexa problem. De här hållbarhetsaspekterna och att jobba med hållbarhet är så kallade wicked problems. Och för att kunna arbeta med det så behöver vi ett systemperspektiv. Vi behöver se helheten. Vi behöver förstå sammanhangen. Och där är ett kulturperspektiv bra. Vi behöver också arbeta med öppna processer. Alltså vi behöver släppa in fler. Vi behöver göra fler delaktiga. Men kanske också fokusera på processer som är öppna för att byta väg. Och där är ett sätt att arbeta som design arbetar väldigt viktigt. Och vi behöver sträva mot en social arkitektur. Och med det menar jag då det som Jens pratar om bland annat, alltså arkitektur som lyfter fram värden snarare än funktioner. Alltså vad ger det för resultat? Och i detta så tänker jag också koppla till någonting annat från Köpenhamn som Tina Sobi, stadsarkitekt där, säger, som jag tycker är väldigt viktigt. Och det är, nu ska vi se om man kan pausa här. Bläddra på. Hon säger så här: urban life before urban space och urban space before urban buildings. Alltså om vi flyttar fokus från byggnader till stadsliv och förstår det först. Vad är det för perspektiv vi har på staden när vi tittar på stadslivet? Och om vi förflyttar vårt fokus när det gäller delaktighet från dialog till samskapande, alltså hur gör vi det här tillsammans? Den här samverkan. Och då behöver vi titta också på vilka är med i samverkan. Ofta pratar man om pentahelix, alltså att 5 olika sektorer ska vara med i lösa de här komplexa problemen. Och också då att titta på vilka värden som skapas, alltså den sociala arkitekturen igen, går från att skapa funktioner till vad ger det för värde, vad ger det för nytta, för samhällsnytta. Och då har jag inspirerats mycket av en brittisk arkitekt som heter Indy Johar. från Zero Architects. Och han säger att vi behöver en arkitektur för Architecture for large conversations. En arkitektur för stora konversationer. Och det betyder då att hur jobbar vi med ett systemperspektiv? Hur jobbar vi med de öppna processerna? Och hur får vi att fler vara med i att skapa den här sociala arkitekturen med värdefokus snarare än funktioner? Och då ska jag hoppa till några exempel här väldigt fort eftersom vi har ganska kort om tid. Ja, genom att jobba med processer som är öppna, att bjuda in och ge utrymme. Vi kan ta ett exempel från hur Köpenhamn har arbetat när man har beslutat sig för att säga ja för ganska länge sedan, att säga ja till initiativ som kommer in. Och okej, varsågoda och gör det här. Och då kan man ju få platser där andra kan ta initiativ och arbeta. Det här exemplet här kommer från en annan stad än Köpenhamn, nämligen från Berlin. Det är uppe på ett tak på ett köpcenter som heter Neukölln-arkaden. Det är en parkeringsplats på toppen av huset, men inte så många bilar som vill parkera där. Så då på Berlins manér kan man säga, så tog några och frågade så här: kan inte vi göra en bar här och en liten sandlåda och lite andra aktiviteter? Och då blev det också en community garden, alltså en möjlighet att odla och vara med för alla. Nästa exempel är från Rotterdam. Det är Dakaker och Lustsingel. Där flyttade ett antal arkitekter och konstnärer in i det huset, och så tyckte de att det här är väldigt svårt att komma in i det här huset. Vi har ingen kontakt med omgivningen. Och så byggde de en trappa. Och sen ursäkta den här bläddringen. Och sen så såg de också, nej men vi vill skapa mer här, för det börjar bli intresse för området. Andra vill vara med och skapa någonting. Och då blev det den här gula gången, bron, som då knyter ihop fler delar av centrala Rotterdam. Och de personerna som står här och tittar på brädorna, de tittar på namn som står där bland alla som har varit med och bidragit. Alltså en öppen process där alla kunde vara med och skapa den här gången. Och sen på taket så har man ett litet café och möjlighet att odla. En pedagogisk verksamhet med barn till största del. Här har vi 2 exempel på hur kultur har kommit in och gjort skillnad på en plats. Det ena är Prags Boulevard 43 på Amager i Köpenhamn. Där aktörer närmade sig fastighetsägaren och frågade: vi skulle vilja göra någonting i det här huset som står tomt. Kan vi hitta en lösning på det? Och det gjorde de. De hittade en lösning som var gratis. Det vill säga de betalade ingenting i hyra under 2 år. Under förutsättning att de använde huset som det var och fick lösa allting själva. Och då var det en organisation som gjorde det, och sen så kopplade de in olika kulturverksamheter, olika entreprenörer som ville starta något företag som inte riktigt hade pengar att göra det någonstans. Och sen så växte det här och blev en tillgång för hela sammanhanget. Det vill säga det skapade värden för området som helhet. Och då steg ju naturligtvis också värdet på fastigheten. Det skapade värden som kommunen var intresserad av också. Det vill säga sociala värden helt enkelt. Och för 2 år sedan ungefär så ville fastighetsägaren sälja fastigheten. Det var ju lite olyckligt, för de hade ju kommit igång de här ganska bra då. Efter ungefär 4 år hade de varit där. Men då hade de byggt en så pass bra ekonomi så de var nära att kunna köpa fastigheten. Det gjorde de inte. Men de har hittat en ny fastighet som de har hittat ett avtal med just i Nordhamn, så de är med och bidrar till utvecklingen där. Vilket också, som Jens sa innan, att man vill ju ha in den här typen av verksamheter för att få en diversitet och mångfald och få det som inte riktigt har ekonomin men som har andra värden de tillför. Och det exemplet längst ner där. Det är Rosens röda matta i Rosengård. Rosengård, vet ni om vad det är? Ett miljonprogramsområde i Malmö. Omskrivet, omtalat för positiva saker och negativa saker. Just det här projektet byggde på att man såg att unga tjejer inte hade någon plats i det offentliga rummet, eller de fick inte plats för killarna tog över hela tiden. Och då ville man se hur kan vi jobba med de här unga tjejerna för att skapa en plats som är deras, och hur tänker de, hur de vill utforma den. Så man designade då från stadsdelen och miljöförvaltningen och stadsbyggnadskontoret en plats utifrån de här unga tjejernas idéer. Och de värden som skapades var ju dels att man fick en plats som var utifrån deras tankar och idéer och behov. Men det som var det ändå viktigare är att man fick med dem, stärkte de här unga tjejerna att ta plats i alla andra delar av staden. Vilket har lett till att de nu är en slags konsulter och hjälper Malmö stad i många andra delar. Det vill säga man fick sociala värden genom att stärka en grupp som man såg var underrepresenterad i många fall. Så platser skapar också nytta i civilsamhället helt enkelt. Man stärker civilsamhället så man får ett engagemang tillbaka som är kanske mer värt än själva platsen som skapas. Och det man kan göra genom kultur ofta när man tar sig an en plats till exempel, så kan man aktivera den tillfälligt. Och då kan man också försöka vara visionär, att se det möjliga i framtiden. Och det är det handlar om ofta, att kunna koppla det som finns med det som är möjligt. Och framförallt att kunna ge verktyg för den resan dit. Och där är kulturen en möjlighet. Och det vi försöker göra är att hitta processer för att samverka kring det och nå dit. Och bidra till det hållbara samhället. Ja, då gick mina 10 minuter och ni fick se en del bilder dubbelt. Tack så mycket.